here who's going to be talking about crafting pitches and breaking through as a blogger. So while we're waiting for everyone to file in, I would love for you to use that chat. Let me know where you're from, if you have a blog and what the name of it is, because we're all going to go follow it, and how many TNN events that you've been to. I'd love to know if you're a first timer here or if this is your 40th time. We always love to see people back, and we love it when people bring their friends and they've never been to one of these events. Welcome, welcome. My name is Leah. For those of you that don't know, I am the Los Angeles chapter leader, and I help Erica run the Nomadic Network events as a virtual host. I also created and co-host a podcast called Ticket to Anywhere podcast. It's a travel podcast on YouTube and anywhere you can listen to your podcast. So I'm just gonna let everyone fill up that chat, wave hey, settle in, make sure your audio is right. And we'll get started in just a second here. I am going to bring up a few housekeeping slides. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Good morning, everybody. Well, good morning from me. Happy Wednesday, though. All right. So, like I mentioned, just in case you forgot where you were, you got lost on the way here, you're at a Nomadic Network event. We are a global travel community inspired by Nomadic Matt, and we launched in 22 cities across the globe at the end of 2019. And the only requirement was that you had to be a travel enthusiast. We didn't care if you've never been on a trip before, if you have no idea how to save a buck. We want to meet you. We want to help you. We are truly a community that's there for each other. And of course, COVID hit. So we transferred, like the rest of the world, all of our events online, which is actually much cooler because now you can visit from wherever you are in the world, whatever time zone. You can make new friends in different countries, and we're able to run multiple events on different topics per week instead of waiting once a month to hold an in-person event. So here we are at virtual events. A few things to keep in mind. You can turn your camera on. We love seeing your face. You are going to be muted for the presentation, but a Q&A will follow. So in the chat, I really want you to utilize it. That's why I had you guys practice at the beginning. We'd love to hear your questions. So make sure to start those off with the word question so I can pull them out of the chat, and Netanya and I will answer them later. But also I want to hear your anecdotes, stories, tips. Like I said, drop your blog in there. We're all going to be supportive and follow each other. Use that chat to connect. I've made some of my best friends literally from talking in the chat with them for like 5 months at every event. And now we meet in person, you know, socially distanced with masks on and whatnot. So replays are available for Patreon members. I'll explain a little bit more about Patreon on the next slide. We're here to learn. We're here to have fun. So, you know, just be cool and kind in the chat. Our speakers, they're always doing this out of the kindness of their heart and the passion and the knowledge that they want to share with you. And I know Netanya's topic is so important and so relevant because COVID, everyone's, you know, some people are still hesitant to go outside. So we want to start YouTube channels, but more importantly, we also want to start blogs, and we want to know how to craft pitches and how do we get that awesome breakthrough on our blog. So like I said, we do have an awesome, very exclusive VIP Patreon community where you can get, you know, things that aren't usually offered to the general public via Nomadic Network and Nomadic Matt. You get event replays, personal stories, input on the kind of content that Matt puts out, live Q&As, which if you've been to a meeting before, you know those are my favorite because Matt will answer every single question and he'll stay until you ask him more questions. Free signed books, all free guides, never before seen photos, exclusive Facebook group access, which is cool because the community, like I've mentioned, is super supportive and people want to help you travel even during these pretty restricted times. So go ahead, hold your phone up to the screen, scan that QR code with your camera, and then a link will pop up if you want to know more about the Patreon community. On the right-hand side, if you aren't able to support or join this cool Patreon community, we do have a one-time donation set up via PayPal. So again, hold your phone camera up and scan that link for more information. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to give Netanya a little intro. Whoops. Hold on 2 seconds. Let's see. So Netanya brings more than 15 years of hospitality marketing experience, perfect, with a focus on influencer relations since 2013. So in addition to being an influencer expert for the wonderful community, she's also a media network lead for the Impact Travel Alliance and co-founder of the Study Abroad and Global Citizenship Influencer Summit, which is an invite-only event with its roots at the White House and attended by top travel influencers. Netanya has been a speaker at the United Nations, and she's been awarded Hospitality and Sales Marketing Association International for excellence in influencer campaigns. And so we are more than grateful to have her here to spread her knowledge and be the expert on this topic of breaking through in blogging. So with that, Netanya, I'll let you take the floor.
Great, well, thank you so much for that intro. I'm actually going to stop my video so that I can focus on the presentation.
Netanya, we can't hear you when you stop your video.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're going to stop my video. That's so weird. Okay. All right. Well, let's try that again. So thank you for the intro, and my presentation is about 25 minutes or so we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. I did want to give you just a little bit more background on myself to give you a little more context as to why I'm speaking with you today. So as Leah mentioned, I've been doing this since back in 2013, and I was leading the PR department for Hosteling International USA at the time, which had about 50 hostels nationwide. So I've led hundreds of collaborations since then and have watched influencer relations evolve from casual exchanges to strategic activations. But the influencers who haven't also evolved with the times are really being left behind. And so to help bloggers get ahead, I created the course, Mastering the Influencer and Brand Collaboration Lifecycle, which pulls back the curtain and shares the brand perspective on how to win more new and repeat business. And today I'm going to give you a taste of that course on the important topic of pitching. So I realize that pitching can be really daunting for many people, and it may even be your least favorite part about being a blogger. And I think it's because many of us look at pitching like being a salesperson and having to sell yourself in this one email. So what I want to do today is shift that mindset and have you think of pitching more like online networking, where you're looking to start a conversation. So let's talk about networking for a minute. In-person networking is fun. Maybe you have a drink in your hand and everyone seems to be smiling and having a good time. Let's say you read someone's badge and you want to introduce yourself. Would you go over there and start listing all your achievements and accomplishments? Or would you give a few pellets about yourself and wait for them to inquire so you can have a dialogue back and forth? I'm guessing it's probably the latter. It's more friendly and both parties are equal contributors in the conversation. Of course, email is a different beast, but if you approach your email pitches the same way, you won't feel like that cold calling salesperson, and your prospects won't treat you that way either. So let's get into it. So I've been working with influencers for over 7 years and have received hundreds of pitches since then. And the majority that I've received either say too much or not enough. They either want to tell me their life story and outline all the terms of a partnership, or they say, hey, I'm a blogger and I want to stay at your place in exchange for a promotion, with no links, stats, dates, or anything else that would be helpful. So during the session, I'll show you how to achieve that right balance. To start, I see pitching as a two-phase process, not that one email that needs to say everything. Phase one is about gauging interest and seeing if they would even entertain the idea of working with you. If you get a positive response back, then you move on to phase two, where you provide more information about what a collaboration might look like. But before we get into that, let's think about what you know, your assumptions, and what you don't know. There is a psychology to all of this, not that I'm an expert in that, but I do know that when people assume what I'm doing or tell me what I should be doing, it rubs me the wrong way. So let's dissect these three areas and ensure we are wording our pitch in a way that will resonate with your prospect. Here's what you know. You know who you are and how you feel about the brand's product or service. You know the brand's basic business proposition. You know what they are promoting on their website and in social media. And you know anything else you see in writing. If you don't see it in writing, then it's an assumption. So moving on to assumptions. This is what you deduce about a brand based on your own research and personal experience. But you never really know for sure that the brand sees it the same way until they confirm. Included in these assumptions are who their target audience is, their priorities, that they want to grow their visibility and engagements, and that they have content and marketing needs you could help fulfill. Based on your own research, these answers might seem logical, but as I mentioned, you never really know what's going on behind the scenes. So lastly, what you don't know is really important to understand. For me personally, I find it off-putting when someone acts like they know these things and we've never had a single conversation. While this list could probably be endless, the big ones are their budget, their decision-making process, and if they even work with influencers. And we'll talk more about these in a minute. So now we're ready for phase one. And this intro should focus on the known, use tentative language around assumptions, and the only unknown you should be asking about is if they work with influencers. Let me give you a few examples so you can see how this comes to life. For the what you know part of this email, the big thing is to keep it positive. Stroke their ego, observing what they do well and how it connects with you as a consumer and as a professional blogger. I've talked to bloggers recently who are anxious to point out that a brand is lacking in certain areas and they want to rush to the rescue. And while the things you're calling out may be true, you'll never win a prospect over by pointing out their flaws. Instead, find something you like about the brand, whether it's a promotion or a fact about them, and then complement it with statements with who you are. Your prospect will then start to understand why you're reaching out and how you could support their brand. Here are some examples of things you could say in that first note. I have a blog specialized in seeing the world by foot, and I'm really impressed by your tours. Or, I saw you're doing a big push around winter destinations, which I'm doing on my blog as well. Or, I love that you're the oldest hotel in Rome. I studied Roman history in school, so I'm particularly intrigued. You can see how each statement takes something about the brand that is a known fact and makes a personal connection to the blogger. This is something brands love to see. We want to know you genuinely know who we are and like what we're about. This also makes the dynamic less transactional and more of a partnership, which will ultimately build a stronger foundation. And the thing you know most about, which your prospect knows least about, is who you are. Always attach your media kit in this first communication so that your prospect can get a better sense of who you are and how you align with their brand. It's a much more user-friendly format than trying to highlight your standout qualities in the email message, and it also shows your professionalism. And if you don't have one or you're not sure where to begin, I've recently become obsessed with Canva, as we were talking about before this presentation started. If you haven't already used it, they have hundreds of free templates to choose from, and if you search for Media Kit, you'll see tons of options that are easy to customize. So that's canva.com. With the assumptions, it's all about how you couch your statements. I appreciate it when bloggers do their research and start to interpret who we are. But as I mentioned earlier, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You might perceive our audience as baby boomers, for example, but we could actually be trying to attract more millennials and wanting to pivot from that stereotype. So unless you see it in writing, never state anything as a fact. Instead, you can get your point across by saying things like, my followers are really into seasonal travel, and if you are looking to expand the reach of this campaign, I could help drive interest. Or, if it's of interest, I have a lot of original content ideas for my channels and yours alike that could help support this promotion. Or, it appears millennials are a key part of your target audience, which is also a key part of my following. Using words like if and it could and other tentative language is a subtle way to show that you did your homework while letting your prospect know they're in the driver's seat. This will be much better received than saying something like, I can help you reach more millennials. On the receiving end of this, it puts me on the defensive. Who said I need help in reaching millennials? Who are you to tell me what I need? Tone in email is very hard to convey, So it's important your word choice is spot on, and it's always better to err on the side of humble. All right, so you know how you're not supposed to talk about money on a first date? Well, never talk about money in a first email. The only thing you should be asking about is if they work with influencers. Their budget and decision-making process will come up once you've confirmed interest in moving forward. Bringing these items up too early will make you seem like you're just going for the sale, as opposed to someone who has a vested interest in a brand's product or service. If some of you are ruminating on a time you got too far down the road only to find out your prospect didn't have a budget, don't worry, we'll get into that later in the pitching process. All right, now let's sum up what not to include, because these can make or break whether or not you get a reply back. And some of these I've touched upon already, but they are what you think your client should be doing, setting terms of a collaboration, and this one I haven't gotten into too much yet, but it's too soon to start laying out the terms of a collaboration. You still have too many unknowns and assumptions to plan anything meaningful, including the fact you don't know if they are interested in working with any influencers at the moment. And lastly, as we just discussed, asking about the budget. Now let's put it all together and see what we've got. And I need to move my little icons. Give me just a moment. All right. So hello, and use your first name if you have it. I wanted to reach out because XYZ Hotel is one of my favorite all-time hotels. I stayed with you in Sydney last year and still think of it fondly. I run the blog FabTrav, which is totally made up, and think my followers would be really excited to learn about your unique amenities, including your spa. My followers, who are predominantly female solo travelers, are really into self-care, and I'd love to share the XYZ brand experience with them. I'm curious if you ever work with influencers. If so, I'd love to explore collaboration opportunities. My media kit is attached for additional background on my audience and reach. Thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. You can see when it comes together, it's very conversational and doesn't have a hard sales pitch in there. It's building a connection between what you do and what the prospect does, without coming across too strong or assuming you know everything about their business. It gives just enough about you to pique their interest, and since this is a two-phase process, we know we'll have another shot to focus on collaboration details and to prop yourself up as a desirable partner. Now, let's say you've sent this email and your prospect responds with this. That sounds great, I'd love to hear more. Often that's all you'll get. But this actually says a lot more than it appears. It confirms that they do or are interested in working with influencers. It confirms your assumptions are at least mostly right. And it lets you know that a follow-up note with more details about what you have in mind should be well received. So an email like this is a great sign. For this reply back, sorry, I have to move these things again. Okay. So for the reply back, you want to focus on the client's objective, which I referenced is still assumed at this point. But as I also mentioned, a positive note from your prospect asking for more information without correcting anything you've said is a good sign you're on the right track. You also want to think of a custom strategic approach and not saying something as simple as, for $500, I'll try your product and then write about it. The more thought you put into your approach and activation now, the more likely you will be to garner your prospect's interest and attention. Lastly, your message should answer the questions, why you and why now? Meaning, why are you the expert to write about this? How does your audience align with theirs? And what makes this activation timely? If you're struggling with how to create a custom approach or pull out a story that will strike a chord with your prospect, here is an insider tip. First, visit their website, pretty obvious, but then take a look at what they're promoting that's not their main product or service. It may be a charity they're supporting, it could be a sustainability initiative, or maybe it's a new line of merchandise. But if the company is known for hotels, for example, but you're seeing a big push for something else, that's your signal. If you don't see something offhand, be sure to check their press releases. Next, whatever that ancillary promotion is, do a quick Google search. If the only thing that comes up is their own website, then they need your help, because it means you've found something that's important to the brand that hasn't yet achieved mainstream attention. and chances are they would love the exposure. As an example, when I was working at High USA, I had this pet project called the Million Gallon Challenge. It was this water saving initiative based on these new shower heads that we got, and I was doing everything in my power to get the exposure I thought it deserved. Very different from promoting our hostels, but this was my priority because it was my initiative. Every now and then I would get approached by an influencer, and if they told me they read about it and wanted to get involved, that's really all they had to say. I didn't care who they were or how many followers they had. I just wanted voices talking about this campaign to keep the momentum going. And chances are there's one of these initiatives at every organization and someone just like me behind it. So keep your eyes open for those opportunities. All right, so back to our email response. For the client's assumed objective, make a statement like, in order to get your promotion in front of more millennials, or to help drive more traffic to your website, or to help more women feel empowered to travel solo. Each one of these statements encapsulates a different objective. The first one is about attracting a particular audience. The second one is about increasing exposure. And the third is about creating a behavior change. But what they all have in common is that they state the problem you're trying to solve and then set the stage for how you will go about doing that. This early in the process, it's important to focus on only one objective or things will start to get muddled. Has it ever happened to you before where you send a long email with a bunch of ideas and your prospect gets stuck on just one thing that they can't see past and they don't like it? We want to avoid that happening by having one area of focus. So pick what you think is most relevant to them that's also aligned with your strengths. Assuming your client wants to move forward, you'll have more opportunities to expand on the partnership and reach secondary goals, but keep it simple for now. For a brand, this custom approach part is really important. This tells me you took the time to research our brand and have a vested interest in the success of this campaign. It makes the partnership feel less transactional and, well, more like a partnership. This is a great place to insert any ideas that surface from your research on non-core products or services that they're promoting. You can also include things like, my followers respond really well to polls, so I was thinking we could do a poll on, or since you're so strong on Twitter, I thought it'd be great to do a Twitter chat, or since your destination is so scenic, I thought a photo series on Instagram would work well. The main thing here is that these statements are not cookie cutter to every other brand collaboration. And just as important, this first statement is not cookie cutter to other influencers. As a real world example, I'm currently working with Jessica from the Dining Traveler to help secure sponsorships for her upcoming holiday video series. We approached a spirits company with the set packages and then also offered to do a virtual happy hour as an add-on. And it was this custom activation that really struck a chord with them and got them excited about the prospect of working together. Now let's get into why now? To really drive that home, share some facts about you, your blog, and or your audience to show how you perfectly align with the client's objective and what you're proposing. And don't forget to include the timeliness part. Here are 2 examples. Holiday travel is the most trafficked content on my site, and given that the holidays are just around the corner, I thought it'd be a great opportunity to share your New Year's Eve promotion. Or, given all the talk about sustainable travel, I thought my followers would enjoy hearing your story. I'm often looked to as an expert in this area, and I would love to do a demo of your product. As I mentioned, these should tie back to your objective. So for the first one, this assumes the objective is to drive more visibility for the brand's holiday promotion. For the second one, this statement assumes the objective is to raise awareness for the brand's sustainability product. Both statements give context as to why the objective is timely and why you are the best person to be promoting it. Think for a second if you only stated the objective and didn't have this context. If, for example, you just said, I could drive more traffic to your brand's holiday promotion. As a brand, I'm thinking, well, I have this digital marketing campaign coming up and our PR agency is going to start pitching this next week. I already have enough going on for this, so no need to take on anything else. But with this extra information about it being the most trafficked section on your website, it makes me start to think I could have a slam dunk. And wow, the holidays are coming up fast. Maybe I could use a little extra assurance that we'll get the exposure we need. Now, the holidays seems like an easy example of something timely, but everything has a timeliness to it. Other examples of things that are timely are things like by chance you'll be in town on a certain day, or that there's a regional event, or even that the sun will be shining. There is always something timely to include, and whatever that factor is, it helps create urgency and a reason to work together now. So, what is the goal of this second email? Here's a hint. The next step is not the proposal. It's actually more communication. In order to set yourself up for success, you need a lot more questions answered from your prospect. If they like what you have to say in the phase 2 email, then you should engage in a healthy back and forth to get the information you need to create a successful campaign. Thinking back to the analogy of the in-person networking, if you're chatting with someone and they say, "We should get together when we're back in Denver," would you say, "Great, let's plan for Thursday, November 5th at 8 p.m. at my favorite diner"? Probably not. You would probably have a bit more back and forth, like, "That would be great. I'm traveling the next 2 weeks, but I'd love to get together at the end of November," and so on. So don't rush into the logistics too fast. It's something you build to, especially when the first communication with your prospect is so terse. So here's what a phase 2 response might look like. Let me move these again. Great. I have several ideas that would build exposure for your spa promotion in particular. In order to drive my followers to your website, I could do a blog post teasing your spa getaway packages. As a compliment, my followers respond really well to polls, so we could do a Facebook poll on which spa package is their favorite. Since health and wellness is so important this time of year, I think it would get a lot of momentum. In fact, I did a post on self-care this time last year, and it was the #1 page on my website for a whole month. I'd also love to know more about your objectives and budget so I can put together a proposal that achieves your campaign and content goals. You can see that it gives more context and specific ideas than the first communication. The first paragraph assumes I went to their website and found this promotion on spa packages, which also aligns well with my solo female traveler audience. I then further customize it by creating a poll specific to the promotion, which also elevates my strengths as an influencer. The next paragraph creates the timeliness factor and validates this content will perform well with my audience. So we have an objective that's important to the client, a custom approach that wouldn't apply to any other brands, and we know why me and why now. In my course, I also share 16 value adds brands love, which are great to insert here to add another dimension to the collaboration. At this point, we've given enough information and context that is reasonable to start asking them questions to confirm their brand objectives, as well as to open the budget conversation. And from this point on, the campaign really needs the client's input in order to be successful. Otherwise, you will be creating an entire plan based on assumptions, which will never be 100% what the client actually wants. To move from assumption to confirm known facts, some of the things you need to know are their main message points. What do they want everyone to know about them? And they might have things they don't want to mention as well. You want to confirm that objective, make sure you're working towards the right thing. And you want to ask about the call to action. Is it to click through to their website? Is it to make a purchase? What do they want people to do after reading the message? And on a similar note, agree upon how you're defining success. Are they looking for just as many impressions as possible? Do they want people to comment or engage with the posts? Or are they really measuring success based on sales? That is really important for designing your campaign to make sure that you're meeting, if not exceeding, your client's expectations. And I always tell influencers too, to print out a copy of your contract when you're doing the campaign execution, and all those details should be in the proposal and the contract just to make sure you're doing exactly what the client wants you to do. And having a copy of that printed out as you're doing the campaign execution will make sure you're checking off everything that you said you would do. So congratulations, you just set yourself up for success. And now if you want more, like how to pack more value into your campaigns, how to write the proposal, contract, and so forth, I can definitely help with that as well. As I mentioned, I have a course, Mastering the Influencer and Brand Collaboration Lifecycle. And the pitch is just one of 14 lessons, which also come with downloadable templates and resources to help you through every step of the process. And the goal of this course is really to help bloggers like you tap into your client's world to better understand what motivates them, how to speak their language, and how to address their greatest needs. This will ultimately help you win more new and repeat business, even in today's challenging climate. I truly believe that when times are tough, there's actually more benefit to working with influencers, and I'll show you how to communicate this value to your prospects. And we recently reduced the price by 1/3 in light of the financial strain so many of us are facing. And we wanted to offer an additional bonus to the Nomadic Network community. Through midnight Friday Eastern Time, you can receive an extra 15% off, which comes out to almost half off the retail price. Leah will put a direct link in the chat, or you can visit my website, travelinfluencerexpert.com, and click on course in the top navigation. And then when you come to the registration page, be sure to enter the code nomadic15off. So I hope you'll check it out. And here's how you can find me. And now I'm happy to take questions about pitching.
Thank you so much, Netanya. Yeah, if you don't mind, keep this up for a few more seconds.
Sure.
And people can grab your info. And there were so many great questions in the chat, and this was incredibly helpful. I'm sure some people are still just starting out, so there's a lot of information to unpack here, but it was super insightful. And what we've done is kind of bucketed the questions into different topics. So we can go ahead and get started. Let's see. I think the first question I definitely want to get asked this is people who are starting out from the beginning. Moshi and Shosi, sorry if I mispronounced that, have a question on what is a decent size audience on the site or on your social channels that's interesting enough for brands to want to have a conversation with you. And I want to piggyback off of that because I've heard a lot of talk about micro influencers, and I want to know what your experience is with them and how brands are looking to work with those people who have a smaller but engaged audience.
Yeah, so that's all. The numbers question gets asked a lot, and that's always a really tough one to answer. Probably when I was at Hi USA, I would say a minimum of 5,000 unique monthly visitors before I would kind of open up the conversation. But kind of a way around that too is I tell influencers to think of themselves as content marketers. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of companies, especially big ones, content marketing is its own department separate from influencer relations. And kind of what I started to do, because Hi USA had a really low budget for all of this, is if I could show that an influencer would support our content marketing needs too, then we would be able to kind of unlock some extra dollars. And so maybe your foot in the door isn't as an influencer, but it's as a freelance content marketer who can provide content. So it's a great way too to get your portfolio up without just relying on the numbers of your followers. But if you are trying to do that kind of strict influencer relationship, I would say about 5,000 unique monthly visitors and maybe 10,000 across your combined across social media channels. Sure. And again, playing up your engagement numbers, because that's why micro influencers are so attractive, because they have such strong engagement numbers. And the reason that influencers are attractive to brands is that brands don't have the same engagement that influencers do, unless you're, just some amazing brand. And so, your followers tend to think of you more like a friend, whereas brands don't have that luxury. So, if we see that your engagement rate is 10 times what ours is, that immediately makes us stop and say, oh, wow, that would be really great. Right.
Absolutely. And it's great because this group's like the nomadic network community, there are a lot of great brands, but there are so many micro influencers, if you will, people who have maybe under 10,000 followers who have such a strong engagement. And I tell them this, I'm like, this is great. Like, your content is wonderful. You have such strong engagement. Like, you could do more with this. You could go fly with it. So, I know some of those people are in this chat right now, just eating up every word you're saying.
And another tip too is instead of talking about your unique monthly visitors, what's actually more helpful is average unique visitors per article. And I think micro influencers would be pretty amazed at how they stack up against some of the bigger guys. Because I actually worked with one of those million follower sites, and it got just as much exposure as some of the micro influencers.
Crazy.
And it's because there's just so much content competing against itself that you're not really getting those views. So, strategically, and I tell this to the businesses I work with, a unique monthly visitors doesn't really affect me. That doesn't help me. What does is how many views is my campaign going to get? How many eyeballs are you going to get for me?
Right.
So
right.
if you're getting over 300 views per article, even over 500, that's really, that's pretty on par with even some of the top influencers. So, you can try focusing on those numbers and the engagements as well.
Sure. And that makes sense, because if you're a unique monthly visitor going to the page, wouldn't you also consider bounce rate? Because it's like, well, what are they reading on the site? Are they going to come to our campaign, or are they really spread out across the website where we don't know what the visitor's focus is, right? So you'd want to probably consider bounce rate if you're looking at the overall metric. But average unique visitors per article is super important, because then you can focus them if you have a good topic. So that's a really good point to make. Great. I want to jump into media kits. We had a few questions from Tracy and Galena. And Tracy wants to know, can you go over some great items to include in a strong media kit?
Sure. So the main thing that a brand wants to know is your audience aligned with mine? So audience breakdown is really important. Male, female split. Where in the world are they? Are there any cities that particularly stand out? What's their kind of income or spending capacity? And age is really important as well. And then also include things that you might not have stats on, but the psychographic information. What are their interests? What do they care about? What kind of issues are important to them? So that way we can get a sense of who your audience is and start making the connection. Oh, that's who I want to attract. That's who I want to get in front of. And then including things like, we want to know how many followers you have across all your main social media platforms. And to be honest, like, let's say you're starting out a YouTube channel and you really want to push that, but you only have 100 subscribers, don't include it, because it just brings everything down. So include, your main channels and the ones that you're proud of, and include your unique monthly visitors, because people want to know that. But if you have that data on unique views per article, I think that'd be great to include as well. And then a short, a few sentences about who you are, what makes you unique, and what your blog is about. Because what a lot of influencers don't realize is that your point of contact is just one person on a team, and they might not be the final decision maker. They might have a boss or a colleague or a department that they have to share this idea with before they can move forward. And the easier you make it for your point of contact to share that information with their colleagues, the more chance you'll have to work together. So kind of I was talking about, you don't want to weight down your email pitch with all the information about who you are. But the media kit, that's where people expect to find it, and that's where they'll be passing it around. So whatever you can do to make yourself look good, put it there. Do your logo wall of all the brands you've collaborated with, or places where you've been featured in an article. Include any awards that you've won. Anything else notable that you just want to brag about. I mean, this is your place to brag. It's the one spot where it's all about you. So yeah, make yourself look good, and then make sure that if someone just passes it as is to someone else, they have all the information they need to understand why you want to work together.
Absolutely. That totally makes sense. So continuing on from that, Galena actually had a question on what's the best strategy to find specific individuals within an organization to contact or to email.
So it's different in each organization. So that is a little bit challenging. Public relations is a good place to start. Sometimes it crosses over into marketing, but I would start with PR or communications, because they're more focused on kind of that external third-party coverage, whereas marketing is more about just paying for specific ads and clicks and whatnot. And it's I get into this in my course a lot more, but kind of talking about the different goals and objectives of marketing and PR. In marketing, they're used to spending money, and they calculate their cost based on how many views they got and how many clicks they got. And to be honest, based on their typical spend, it doesn't look like a good fit for influencers. Like if you calculate your cost per click, it's going to be about 10 to 20 times higher than a marketing campaign. So there's like a different psychology to approaching them than someone in PR and communications. Whereas PR kind of understands the greater value and the other, leverage that you can get through content like this. PR likes those third-party links that we can say, look, somebody else is writing about our brand.
Sure.
So I would start with PR and communications. And then, look on their social channels, see if they are sharing any blogger content about themselves. And if there's some sort of contact in there, or through press releases, you can kind of get a name. That's always a good spot to identify who's in PR. And then just, LinkedIn is another great way to just kind of tap into people, read about what they do with their job, and see if they're the right fit.
Sure. All right, that's great information. I want to kind of move to the next bucket, which, speaking of emails, let's talk about emails. So Nicholas wants to know, he had a thought of, doesn't every email create a chance for the other party to kind of step out or back out of the process?
So is that kind of like saying you should put everything in one email so that way you're not giving your client, their prospect, a more chance to opt out? Is that the?
Yes. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
My response to that would be then it's not the right fit. You don't want to force yourself on someone who's not the right fit, because it's not going to do either of you any favors. Maybe it's that your audience isn't the right fit for what the brand is doing, so they won't respond well to it. Maybe they don't have the budget to pay you. Maybe they're just a difficult client. So if someone doesn't want to work with you, and they opt out because of the extra communication, then they're not the right fit. But what you're really looking to do here is to relationship build. You're not a salesperson, you're a strategic consultant, and you have valuable advice and services to offer. And if you just try to just shove it all into one email so that way you don't have to get rejection later, it's just they're not going to think of you in that same vein.
Okay. All right. So Nicholas also wanted to know, don't busy people get annoyed when there's too much back and forth mailing before getting to the point? I think we could have piggybacked that off your last question, but.
Yeah, and it's not to say that you have to send like 100 emails once you get past the first two. And it might be you send that first one and they want to schedule a call with you, or maybe after the second one you suggest talking on the phone. But I think the point is you really need to have a dialogue so that you're creating a campaign that supports the client's needs, and that they have a voice in it. So yeah, you don't want to kind of drag this out and just kind of pepper in one question, every email. Like once you get that second email and they say, that's great, I'd love to move forward, or send me a proposal, then you just say, okay, great. I really want to make sure I'm designing something that meets your needs. Do you have a few minutes to hop on a call? Or can I send you 5 questions just to make sure that I'm hitting all your needs? So you don't have to, drone it on forever. And so in my example, the reply back was, that sounds great, I'd love to hear more. But they could send back like, wow, yes, I'm working on this campaign, I could really use some help with it. They might give you more. And then your second email back can also kind of move the ball forward a little bit faster.
Sure. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Now, for those starting out and size of blogs and more audience questions, do you have any advice for like baby blogs who are just starting out to get their first campaign or throw their first pitch, perhaps for only blogs or Instagrams that only have a few hundred followers and a handful of visitors to their site per day? Would you say they keep building until they get to a certain level, or what's your thoughts on that?
So there's a few things you can do. One is you can just pretend you have a campaign partner. So what I mean is, let's say you like Marriott. Do a campaign for them. They don't have to pay you. They don't even have to know about it, but stay at their hotel, pretend like they paid you to do so, write a blog post about it on social media, and tag them if you want. And you'll have the metrics to back up that campaign. And you can even include it in your case studies. No one has to know they didn't pay you. It doesn't matter.
Right.
It really doesn't matter. All that matters is that you got results for it. And it shows your style of writing and that and all that. And, Marriott might even hit you up and say, wow, thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one way. And then another, a lot of, especially during off season, a lot of travel brands are more willing to work with smaller influencers, especially on an in-kind basis. So maybe, you're staying at their hotel for free and they're not paying you anything, but, you do a nice promotion for them. And you can even, I know some influencers don't like to do the free thing, but when you're starting out, kind of everybody has to pay their dues like that. I mean, when I was never an influencer, but when I was getting started in marketing communication, I did so much free writing just so I could have this portfolio to show to people and say, look, this person thinks I'm good enough to publish me.
Right.
So do a few free campaigns. And right now, I mean, all the major travel companies, no matter how big they are, they don't have money to spend. And everybody, I feel like, is just chomping at the bit to do something. Like, it's boring. We're in marketing and communications. They want to have campaigns. They want to do something fun. We don't have money. So now is a really good time actually to get those free campaigns and to build a relationship. And that, maybe when travel rebounds and you did something really great for them in the off season when things are slow, they'll remember you.
Oh, so you're saying I could have turned every campaign I had on, my website or Instagram, like, hey, Hilton, Playa del Carmen, thank you for the stay. But that's what people do. I see that people tag brands, they take a picture in their Adidas sandals and they're like, yo, Adidas, like, thanks for providing my kicks for this walk today to wherever, and sometimes brands will notice, they'll like, that leads into other things, but that's kind of hilarious because I'm like, man, I do that with brands all the time. Like, thank you, JetBlue, for flying me to blah, 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 blah. I was not paid for that. No.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a great tip. Even Catalina was like, that's super clever. So thank you for reinforcing what everyone is almost already doing on their social media networks.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. That's great. So Nicholas had another question. Is there a different approach for pitching companies that are not used to working with influencers?
So that's tough. I always say it's easier to preach to the choir. So, I mean, if it's like a big brand, I think it's going to be an uphill battle. If it's a smaller brand where they're just more flexible and they don't have to jump through a lot of hoops and, the person you talk to is the decision maker, then I think you can kind of engage in those conversations. And I think too, by kind of approaching yourself as that content marketer and not just an influencer, showing that you can provide other value, I think that kind of helps people see influencer marketing a little bit differently. But for me personally, I wouldn't waste your time like trying to convert somebody. It's easier to work with someone who already understands their value and what they can achieve. And think about it too, like if you convince them and they say, okay, we'll work together, how much scrutiny are you going to be under? You're their first influencer and they weren't even sure about it and they said yes to you, so don't let me down. Sure. I don't know if I'd want to put myself in that position.
Right, exactly. And it might create, more work for when there could be potential other people out there that would easier, work with you easier. So that makes sense. Some good reality for us all. So Moshi wants to know, what do you think about influencer networks? Are they worth the effort? Is it better to go directly to the brand?
Like working with like an agency, is that what that means?
Yeah. Different agencies, different people who can promise to connect you with others, etc.
So I did both when I was with Hi USA, and I thought the agencies were really helpful when I was looking to reach a specific type of audience. I didn't have those personal connections. So I did use them in several cases for big scale campaigns. And it was great because it got me in front of these really great influencers that I never would have found on my own. After a while, you feel like you kind of know everybody, you go to these, TravelCon or TBEX, like, oh, I know everybody. But then it's like, you hear about this other blogger who's got 60,000 followers. Like, how come I never heard of you? So they are kind of great for helping diversify your contacts as a brand. So, I honestly, I don't know what the split is for the influencer versus the agency, but it can't hurt to put yourself out there and kind of help more brands find you.
Yep, that makes sense. So, I mean, you could do both, I guess, right? Like pitch directly and then be part of a network as well to kind of spread out all over. So that makes sense. All right. I do want to jump back to emails. I think the chat wants more specific tips. Like, would you say LinkedIn is the best way to go and search for the PR and communications team at a certain brand? Say we were searching for you at HI USA, would we say like public relations at Hostling International, like search that on LinkedIn? How do people go about actually like finding these people? Google search?
Well, so first go to the brand's website, and a lot of times they'll have an about section and they'll list contacts, and going to their press releases. Usually if you click open a press release, they'll have the media contact listed on the press release. Some of the bigger companies have gotten really clever at hiding email addresses because they just, don't want people to get flooded. But I would say for smaller and mid-sized businesses, you should have a pretty good shot of finding the leadership and the right point of contact on their website. If you do need to dig a little bit deeper, then I would do LinkedIn next. And yes, I would look for public relations. And usually it's either the manager or the director who is leading influencer relations.
Right.
But if you can only find somebody in marketing, read a little bit about what they do, and see if there's any kind of crossover. And usually marketing and communications works closely together. So if you're not the right person, hopefully they can refer you to who is.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, there were quite a few questions that popped up about that. So thank you for all that detailed information. So we just got a really great question from Tina. Tina says, I'm not from an English-speaking country and I'd like to do a blog in another language. Do you still suggest working with big brands that are concentrated on an international market, or concentrate on local brands more so?
That's an interesting question. So it's really about who the brand is trying to attract. And that is kind of really hard to know if you don't work at the brand. Because like I'm from the DC area, for example, and we have international travelers coming here all the time. But I don't know for each hotel, who their primary clientele is. That's kind of proprietary information. That one, it's hard to know without having kind of more specifics about kind of the language you're writing in and who you're looking to attract. But kind of going back to kind of that part about kind of what your assumptions and what you don't know, do your best to kind of think about who would be interested in this. And then you can kind of move into assumptions. But if you don't know the answers to these things, then I wouldn't waste your time. So if you can deduce from research that this certain company is interested in this market, then approach them. But for me, there's just a lot of unknowns with that to kind of give you a good answer about who to go after.
Okay. Great answer though. Thank you for that. I thought that was an important question that popped up. So I think we have one last one here if no one else has any other questions. Knowing that travel isn't really the same right now, may not be the same for a while, and Americans can't go as far internationally as we'd like to, how can someone who is pitching to a brand take that into consideration?
Sure. So one of the things that there's been a lot of talk about lately is kind of the local travel, and local meaning where can you drive to, maybe like the 3 to 6 hours radius from where you are. So it's a really great time to kind of hone in on those local relationships and kind of promote that to kind of regionally. So that's one part. And then another part, I encourage you to check out this campaign that US Travel Association is doing right now called Let's Go There. And their whole thinking behind the campaign is that people can't travel right now, but just the thought of planning something or having somewhere to look forward to is enough to kind of scratch that itch. So I think there'll be some really good messaging points off there that influencers can play to, and kind of people plan trips far in advance. Sometimes people plan a year in advance. So I hope we're not in this situation next year this time.
Right.
So, you know, start having those conversations now. Like, people are antsy to travel. So what campaign, you know, now's the perfect time for a campaign, because by the time this campaign comes out, people are really going to be in trip planning mode, and, you know, it'll be great. So, yeah, I wouldn't let the pandemic stop you at this point. Kind of everybody's kind of, I don't want to say comfortable where we're at, but it's our new normal, and we're trying to figure out how to function. And part of that means kind of continuing with business. So yeah, I would say focus on the local, regional travel, and then also kind of take some of that messaging about having something to look forward to, something to plan for, and how you as an influencer can help get your audience excited about traveling 6 months from now.
Right, right, absolutely. Or if it's traveling now or soon with, you know, proper precautions and whatnot. So, okay. Patrice actually had an additional question that I'm sure many would want to know, but like, for people who have baby blogs or they are micro influencers, like, what kind of compensation are they expecting, should they expect in return? Would it be monetary? Would it be items? Would it just be exposure? Like, what is a standard, if there is one?
Yeah, it's hard to give a standard for that. And I would say, especially now, you're probably going to expect more the in-kind type of arrangement. Sure. You know, if the way that you can get, you know, more money off of that is if you give them rights to photography or content or things like that. So again, thinking of yourself more as a content marketer than as an influencer, I think you'd have better luck kind of getting paid. But yeah, I'm trying to think. It's you know, what we would pay influencers. I mean, it would be anywhere from, like, you know, $100 for like a content piece from someone who is just a content creator to, you know, $300-500 depending on how big their following was.
Right.
And then, you know, campaigns would be upwards of $1,500. So
okay,
it's kind of across the board, and it just really depends on, you know, your time investment and you know, what you have to offer.
Yep, 100%. I can see how that would vary, especially with people who are just starting out. So, but that's good to know. I think people sometimes want to hear numbers and be comforted by that, or try to compare that, but it's not always the same across the board. So thank you for all of this information. I know the chat was loaded with tons of questions. So Netanya, you were wonderful and dropped so many nuggets of wisdom. And if we didn't get to your question in the chat, everyone, you can go ahead and reach out to Netanya. I know she left her contact info up there. Erica has also dropped the Mastering Influencer Collaboration Lifecycle course that Netanya is so generously providing a bit of a discount for the Nomadic Network. So that is also in the chat. And I know everyone has been like, this has been so helpful. So we really appreciate it. I'm just going to share a few sign-off items before we depart. All right. So once again, you were at a Nomadic Network event inspired by Nomadic Matt. And these are our events for the next week or two here. We had Netanya at the top left over there. We have a couple happy hours, or we have one happy hour coming up today. We do have this event, actually, another event today was canceled. Unfortunately, we will be rescheduling it. Future of Student Travel with Flight. That is going to be rescheduled. So that is not happening today. We apologize in advance for those who have signed up for it. And in the next few weeks, we have Jamaica, over tourism to under tourism, and how to improve your travel photography. If you go to the website at the top of the slide, you can see all of our events for the next 2 months up there. It's wonderful. Like I said before, we have our Patreon community with VIP and exclusive perks and benefits. If you just scan your phone on the QR code, you could see what everything that becoming part of this community provides and more, and also those bullet points at the bottom there. And we do have that one-time donation for Nomadic Network via PayPal on the right side as well. So these events just are not the same. If it was just Erica, myself, and Netanya, as always, we thank the audience, you guys, for being here, for actively dropping your questions in and being part of the chat. I know Netanya is just the wisest, and this is so relevant during this time. So thank you so much for this. And thank you all for joining another Nomadic Network event. And we will see you soon. Have a safe and wonderful weekend, everybody.
Thank you.